just make sure we are all on the same page, and then go into principle number 7 of God's plan for the 90%. Again, this is God's plan for the 90%. Before we get started, has anyone really taken to heart the things we've gone over so far and like made any changes with how they view finances or any changes with how they, live their life as it relates to finances? Yeah? You want to share really fast? Got a microphone. Thanks so much.
So before I came to Oklahoma, I actually went to Kingdom Business Institute, where it literally was taught by millionaires, and it's literally a whole business class. So I literally, and then God reminded me, like, do you remember you actually studied this? You went a whole year
Man.
to this Kingdom Business College, and, and then I actually found my workbook. Like, go look for your book because again, like all I didn't even realize before I even went to that class how much the word literally talked about finances
A lot.
and stuff. And so even and the good thing about the class being taught by the millionaires, they're saying like, even if I gave you X amount of dollars, like, do you know what to do with it? How do you know? Would you be able to keep it? And so it was just so many different things I learned like doing that class. And so hearing you talk about it was like, oh yeah.
Is
So
that
it's like
right?
like
I knew this.
oh like
Yeah.
oh. And so it's like
Yeah.
so how much is that that you learned that you're applying? And so that's when I got checked, like, like, thank you, Daddy, for the reminder. Like,
Hmm.
and so even me just like going over and having to do my budget and me paying off like one of my cards and stuff because it was like you believing for this, but you need to get rid of this debt. And then now, and I realized I never did ask him like Daddy showed me
Right.
how to get rid
Right.
of it. So now he started telling me like different how to pay off certain things, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really humbling.
That's good. I'm glad though. I'm glad you're able to make moves now. And it only took 2 times hearing the same lesson. Because sometimes children of Israel they took 40 years on repeat. Luckily for you, I don't know how long ago you took the class, but luckily it was only 2 times. But yeah, did anyone else change their viewpoints on finances and want to just share really quickly about what they've gotten so far?
I'm learning about the biblical points of tithing. So when I tithe, I'm giving with a heart of worship towards God and also with expectation. And then also trying to juggle all my finances does get to be a little bit overwhelming. But then God has shown me, over time in his own unique way of revealing to me how to strategically map things out for a clearer financial goal.
Good. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And yeah, with the tithing, I recommend you read chapters. I think it's like 8 through 14 of Deuteronomy. Because I was rereading that just in preparation for this weekend, and there was some stuff in there that I read about tithes that I never learned before. That I was like, you can do what with the what? Like there was one thing where if you lived too far away, because your tithe at that time was specifically your grain and your harvest and your crops and your animals and stuff. So if you lived too far away from where the feasts were happening and you needed to bring your tithe, then what it said to do was to sell your tithe for money, bring your money to the festival, and then it says, spend whatever your heart's desire was for you and your family with the tithe, and then feast with everyone in your household. And I was like, that's part of the tithing process? I was like, what does this have to do with, huh? So there's a lot of stuff going on with tithe that it's a lot more than just 10%. There's a lot more to it than just 10%, right? It's honoring God with what He's given you so that you have a fullness in the life that God has given you. It's really just you're giving Him something that He's already given you. And so with that, it's more of a heart posture than a percentage. So there's some crazy stuff with tithing. Crazy stuff with tithing. So anyway, in purpose of review, I'll stay planted, Flora, so you can hop back to the computer. Thank you. So for review, number one, was work is God's primary wealth building system. Number one, work is God's primary wealth building system. And with that, we looked at Proverbs 14:23. It says, in all labor there is profit, but mere talks leads only to poverty, right? To make money, you got to do something. You can't just talk about something, you know? Even if you're in sales and you're just talking about something, you need to, what's referred to as closing, which is the actual action that ends the talking, right? So that was number one. Number two, wisdom creates wealth. We looked at Proverbs 24:3-4. By wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established, and by knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. Right? So wisdom is what builds the house. And we all should know, what is the beginning of all wisdom? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom, right? So you can get riches outside of God, but you can't get wealth outside of God. They're two different things, right? They're two very different things. So we're called to wealth. Wealth produces riches, but just riches alone will never actually produce a wealth, right? And then we looked at number three. We live below your means. Again, these are the 7 principles that is in the Bible for wealth. Live below your means, number 3. We looked at Proverbs 21:20. The wise have wealth and luxury. Remember, so what's the beginning of wisdom? The fear of the Lord. And so the wise will end up having wealth. With wealth comes luxury, right? So the wise has wealth and luxury, but fools spend whatever they get. Fools will spend whatever they make, right? So, and again, none of us here this morning are foolish, right? And if you were foolish a couple weeks ago, we are no longer going to act as foolish people, right? There was even some things in our own lives that I was, behaving foolishly about, because we'd get something and we would just spend it immediately for something that we might believe we needed at the moment, right? But truth be told, there was no real profit from getting that, right? So number 3, live below your means. Number 4, avoid the bondage of excessive debt. And we looked at Proverbs 22:7. Just as the rich rule the poor, so the borrower is servant to the lender, right? And we talked about also what servanthood actually looks like, right? It means you're listening, you're obeying, you live your life in accordance to the rules that are set by your master, right? So if you're servant to someone who has a debt over you, then you got to do what they say, right? Or then they're legally allowed to execute certain things on your behalf, right? And so you are subject to the lender. Now, with that, there are also some wisdom and some loopholes you can use to systematically use debt for your good, right? And with that, you kind of you flip the whole thing over and you kind of make it your servant, right? Because you were strategic with how you went into it, right? Kind of like, I mean, it might be a little bit of a stretch, but the Lord placed it in my heart, so I feel like it's safe to say. Kind of like whenever Joseph went into slavery, right? He was placed there as a servant, but using wisdom and what God had given him, he was able to flip that whole thing over, and then he became the ruler of the thing that he was placed as a servant to be, right? So kind of the same thing with debt. Systematically, if you don't know how to use it properly, then you'll be placed in as a servant. You might stay a servant and then die in the prison for the whole time. Or, using God's wisdom, you can be placed in as a servant and then flip the whole thing over and then use it for your good and your benefit, right? So, but with that, requires a lot of research, knowledge, deliberate actions, right? You can't be passive when it comes to a debt. There was that one passage in Proverbs that we read to where if you've put your name up for someone else's debt, swallow your pride, go run and take care of that today, like immediately, right? So you can't be passive when it comes to debt. You cannot be passive. If you're passive, then the banks end up winning, and which is fine, if it's a Christian institute, which is fine, But most of the time, we don't want the banks to win. We want us to win, right? So that's number 4. Number 5 was save and prepare for the future. We looked at Proverbs 6:6-8. Take a lesson from the ants, you lazy bones. Learn from their ways and become wise. Though they have no prince or governor or ruler to make them work, they labor hard all summer. gathering food for the winter. So you want to save and prepare for the future. There's also verses talking about work while you can work during the day, because the night's coming when no man can work, right? There's also verses talking about how a good son will go to harvest the fields while he can, and a lazy son will sit idly by. So there's a lot of verses talking about storing up and producing while you can produce, because there are moments where you can no longer produce, right? So saving is part of God's plan. That's just the way the world works. That's the way the system works, because there are moments where you cannot produce. That's just the way it works, right? So we want to make sure that in the moments where we can produce, we're safe for the moments that we can't produce, right? So that is number 5, save and prepare for the future. And then number 6, invest rather than just merely consume. With that, we looked at Ecclesiastes 11, 1 through 2. Send your grain across the seas, and in time profits will flow back to you. But divide your investments among many places, for you do not know what risks might lie ahead. We all know the, what's it called? The metaphor, I guess. Don't put all your eggs in the same basket, right? That's where this comes from. Don't put all your grain in one ship, because if that basket breaks or that ship fails, well, there goes 100% of your investment, right? So not only is the expectation to invest, but the unspoken expectation, well, spoken, but you got to kind of look for it, is also you need to diversify your investments, right? You don't want to invest 100% of anything into one thing, because that one thing might fail, right? It might fail. So that is review. Does anyone have any questions about those 6 before we get going into today's topic? I just want to make sure that there is a space for questions. Okay. No questions is fine with me. All right, so number 7, the 7th and final principle that we're going to talk about as far as God's plan for the 90% is increase your income before merely cutting your expenses. You want to increase your income, honestly, more than just trying to cut your expenses. Because before we get into it too far, if you have, I don't know, $150 light bill, and then you make it a point to start saving energy, even if you save the maximum amount of energy you can, you might turn that 150 into 100, you know? So with all of that work you've done, you're only saving $50 a month. What is that at the end of the year? Not much, right? It might be a lot to someone who has nothing, right? But to us, who are children of God, who are called to, remember 4.5 million was a small amount, right? That's how much a talent was. That's a small amount. So to us, $100 should be nothing, right? So why would I try to limit my expenses? Which, of course, if there's useless expenses, we can limit those as we're growing, right? But you're going to have a much higher return on your time investment, because that's what we're doing. We're investing our time towards a thing. You're going to have a much higher return on your time investment by spending it making more money than you would be just trying to limit your expenses, right? Because if I spend 2 hours a week worrying about cutting my expenses, I might save $50 a month. But if I spend that exact same 2 hours a week learning something that I could sell for profit or increase my own skill set to then get a better job, right? The return on that is going to be a lot more than $50 a week or a month, right? Because with cutting your expenses, there is a maximum cap to how much you can save, right? Whereas with increasing your income, there is no maximum cap, right? So my risk versus reward philosophy is that if it has a maximum risk but a limitless reward, then I'll usually do that, because my risk is capped here, but my reward is endless. But if it has a capped reward and a endless risk, I'm never going to take that. Right? I'll never take that, because I can only get so much back, but the risk on that could be endless. That's why I won't ever own a motorcycle, right? Because the reward for that is a little bit of fun, a little bit of enjoyment, saving gas. The risk for that is death, right? So I won't ever get on a motorcycle, right? Because it's limitless risk. I won't do that. But I'll always invest my money in the stock market because the risk for that is just how much money I put in, right? But the reward for that is endless. So I'll always do that, right? I'll always be doing that. So that's just a little bit before we get into it. You always want to try to increase your income more than just cutting your expenses. So with that, we're going to look at Deuteronomy 8:18 in the NASB. It says, "But you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is He who is giving you, who and a lot of translations say have given you, giving you power to make wealth, that He may confirm His covenant, which He swore to your fathers, as it is this day." Which is interesting. A lot of people get hung up on the fact that it says He's given you power to create wealth. Why has He given you power to create wealth? It's to confirm His covenant that He made with your fathers as it is this day. So there's a reason as to why we are given the power to create wealth. And if you read Deuteronomy's chapters 1 through 8, this is Moses talking to the children of Israel as they are mentally preparing to take the promised land. And Moses has to stir up the people as to why God has given us this promised land and what we need to do in said promised land, and make sure you follow the covenants that were set before you, or XYZ will happen if you do, or XYZ will happen if you don't, right? And so with that, chapter 8 was specifically talking about once we're listening to all of the promises and we have this maximum reward, and just to pull out a couple of verses, I didn't throw any of this in there, Flora, but let me scroll up. In chapter 8, verse 7, it says, "For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains, of springs, flowing forth with valleys and hills, a land with wheat and barley and vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey, a land where you will eat food without scarcity, in which you will lack nothing, a land whose stones are iron, and out of those hills you can dig copper. When you have eaten and are satisfied, you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land which He has given you. Beware that you don't forget the Lord your God by keeping His commandments." So this whole thing of where it says in chapter, or in verse 18, it starts with, "But you shall remember." That's because, hey, all this stuff that God's about to bring you into, it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome, right? But don't forget, it's God who has given you all of these things, right? It's God who has given you the power to create wealth for the purpose of fulfilling His covenant that He created with your fathers, right? So it's literally nothing that you can do. All your aspect, the only thing that you have to do is just keep the commandments, which again is the thing that God laid out, right? God set the rules, the rule book. All you have to do is follow the rules, and everything that comes with that comes with that. But as you're doing those things, don't for a second think that it was you who did any of this stuff, right? Right? So that's why it says, but you shall remember the Lord your God, because He's the one who gave you the power to create wealth, right? So with that, we are going to look at Ecclesiastes 11:6. Because again, we just touched that last verse because, again, it is God who gives us the power to do these things. So even though we're going to talk about a couple of principles and techniques to increase your wealth, don't for a second think that it's us who are doing anything, right? We're just being obedient to the voice of the Lord who guides us into all truths, all things, right? So Ecclesiastes 11:6. It says, "Plant your seed in the morning and keep busy all afternoon. For you don't know if profit will come from one activity or another, or maybe both." So what's this saying? This is saying that you need to have more than one stream of income. If your job is the only thing that's making you money, you are behind, according to God, according to Solomon, right? This is Ecclesiastes, written by the wisest, richest man who's ever lived, and whoever will live, right? You need more than one stream of income. Okay? Because again, we're spending money all day, every day, but we're only making money one day every 2 weeks. We should be making money all day, every day, and then spending money seldomly, right? But we won't do that ever, right? We're going to spend money all day long, which means we need to make money all day long, right? To counterbalance, to offset the two, right? You got something to say?
The way you described it, it was like, uh, it was kind of like divine activity, God did it, you know. And here, it looks like human responsibility. So it's almost like it takes both. Like God is going to do his part. So you got to plant your seeds. You got to get up in the morning. You got to be busy. You have to, you know, there's that word activity or another, right? One activity or another. So like that thing, there's multiple streams, but God is going to do his part, but then it's
Yeah.
like it won't work if you can't make it out. I just saw when you were talking the first about ABT, it was all about God. And even Ecclesiastes is saying, okay, now he's with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to talk about it here in a second as well. But it's our job, as we see here, it's our job to plant the seed. That's always been our job. That will always be our job. It's God's job to multiply the seed. And I forgot who said it, but there's this one speaker, and he's like, I'm so glad that that's how it is. Because if God was planting the seeds and it was up to me to multiply, he's, oh man, that'd be so hard, right? So we have the easiest part of it. All we got to do is plant the seed. And then it's God who brings the multiplication. It's God who will always bring the increase. We just have to trust and believe that the seed that we're planting will reap the harvest that we're expecting, right? So that's part of it as well. Because no farmer is going to waste his time planting a seed he doesn't believe will grow a harvest, right? But a farmer will also plant the right seed, right? At the right time, in the right fertile ground, and in the right season, right? Because there's a season for everything. There's a harvest for everything. And what a farmer won't ever do is plant weeds into his own field, right? So there's a lot that you can learn from seed time and harvest principles that you need to apply into your own life, right? So it says, plant your seed in the morning and keep busy all afternoon, for you don't know if profit will come from one activity or another, or maybe both. Hopefully both, right? Most of the time, it will be both. But there are instances where it won't be both, okay? So we are now going to look at Proverbs 31, 10 through 29. This is talking about the virtuous woman, which up until preparation for this teaching series, I was always like, God, this is what the perfect wife looks like. This has something to do with me. But then on this teaching series, he was like, but who are you to Christ? As a man, you are the bride of Christ. Okay, so as a man, this is spiritually what men should be doing. This is physically what wives should be doing, but spiritually, this is what men and women should be doing, right? This is not a unisex activity, okay? So we're going to look at this really fast. We're going to look at this in the context, again, of wealth creation, okay? There's a lot of other things you can pull out of this, but specifically the one we're going to be pulling out of is going to be the wealth aspects of this, okay? So, who can find a virtuous and capable wife? She is more precious than rubies. Her husband can trust her, and she will greatly enrich his life. She brings him she brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She finds wools and flax and busily spins it. So this is the first one, okay? She sources her own material, she finds her own resources, and then she does something with the resources that she's found. She's spinning it. In this context, specifically, she's making clothing. She's a clothes maker, okay? She is like a merchant ship bringing her food from afar. She gets up before dawn to prepare breakfast for her household and plan the day's work for her servant girls. That sounds like some CEO activity, right? She is setting forth the plan for her entire household. And she's producing the food for her household. which in humanistic terms means, some eggs and toast, right? But in spiritual terms, it means that she is setting forth the things that the household will need to depend on and rely on for the upcoming days, weeks, months, yada, 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 right? So she is setting up the trajectory of her household, okay? She goes to inspect a field and buys it. With her earnings, she plants a vineyard. So here the wife is making her own money. Not only is the wife making her own money, but she's also the one who goes and inspects the field. If you think about it, I haven't ever run the numbers, but it's just looking outward looking in, it appears that most realtors are women. I think there might be a natural calling here that Proverbs was pulling out of, that women go and inspect fields. You know what I mean? And then they buy it. So the fact that most realtors are women, after I read this, is like, that's no longer surprising to me, right? That's part of what a virtuous woman is supposed to be doing, So she goes and inspects the field and buys it. And then with her own money that she's made, that's what earnings are, with her own money that she's made, she plants a vineyard. So now she's reinvesting in something that she went and sought out and looked after. Okay, she's reinvesting into the thing that she has found. Okay? She is energetic and strong, a hard worker. In today's society, a lot of the words that are spoken to most girls is that you need to be weak and docile and subject and servant to a man. And men only like weak and frail girls. The reason that's been spread around is because a lot of men are weak these days, right? And they don't want to have to, one up. And so instead of trying to one up and be the man they're supposed to be, they're like, well, women just be lesser than. That's not how it's supposed to be. Women are supposed to be strong and energetic. But the Bible says that they are the weaker sex. So men have to be even more strong and more energetic, right? But men don't want to do that. So instead, in the hierarchy that they've set up for the world, they're like, well, women just be weaker so we can be weaker, right? Lord have mercy, right? So anyway, I'm not going to draw too much on that. It doesn't deal about money, so we're not going to talk about it. She makes sure her dealings are profitable. Her lamp burns late into the night. She makes sure that her dealings are profitable. Okay, so she's not just spending her time, wasting her time, not doing profitable activities. You were getting pointed to, so I'm bringing you the microphone.
I'm not going to talk about it a whole lot because I know Apostle and I want to dig deeper into this. But as we was getting dressed this morning, they've given numbers that women have. It's not quite doubled in the workforce, but it's way past the men. So men are becoming stay-at-home husbands and stay-at-home boyfriends. And this is a big thing right now. And so it's something to look at, because if men are the stronger vessel, according to scripture, and they are, what's really happening with this Proverbs woman, and why have men lagged? And so, it was just mind-blowing, the numbers that they were throwing out when it came to the woman bypassing the men in the workforce.
Man, yeah, that's crazy. And not to say that women aren't supposed to be in the workforce, because here we see that they are, but the fact that the boyfriends in this case aren't in the workforce, that's where the problem needs to be,
Every TV series or movie that has a woman as a lead, they're all strong women. So if men only wanted weak women, they wouldn't be going to those kind of movies. They wouldn't be watching those TV shows, but they're the more popular ones. So the men are actually seeking out strong female roles. And I kid her around about, she's my kit butt girl. Because she's strong, and I appreciate that in her. And I think men may say they want a weak, docile woman so that they can control over them, but really they want somebody that's strong.
Mm-hmm. Well, they do, yeah, because the last thing I want to do is have to support myself fully and then also support you fully. We should be both bringing the same amount of effort into this thing, you know. But talking about TV and stuff, you might notice though with all those sitcoms that has a strong, definite woman as the lead, you'll always see like a goofball of a husband who's not doing nothing, you know. And so they've programmed in America at least this idea that oh, women can be strong but a strong woman can't ever be with a stronger man. A strong woman has to be with a goofball of a husband, you know? And so they were at the same time strengthening women, which obviously has proven fruitful because now there's more women in the workforce, right? But at the same time, they're weakened men in the eyes of the society, right? Because men are goofballs and women are strong, you know? So yeah, it's crazy that you brought up the whole, I didn't want to talk about that, but yeah, it's very true. So, so she makes sure her dealings are profitable. Her lamp burns late into the night. So again, it says she makes sure that her dealings are profitable. Okay? Which means that she is also looking over the things that she's put into place to make sure that the things that she has been doing has proven fruitful, is profitable, right? Her lamp burns late into the night, right? Which means she's not lazy. It means she's working on what she's working on. And the thing that she's working on, she's making sure is a thing that is profitable. Okay? Her hands are busy spinning thread, her fingers twisting fiber. So here she is making clothes again. Earlier in verse 13, we saw her making clothes. So here she's making clothes again. Her hands are busy making clothing. She extends helping hands to the poor and opens her arms to the needy. Again, we're going to talk about it here at the end, but the whole point, the entire point of having excess, which excess just means more than what you need, the whole point of that is to give to others, right? So you have an expectation for what you need, and, you know, a lot of churchgoers aren't happy with this. You know, they don't, but I'll subject myself to it because that's what the Bible says. But as you grow in wisdom and stature and wealth, your lifestyle can also increase. You're called to increase, but don't ever eat up 100% of your increase for you. Okay? As you grow your family's wealth, there will always need to be an overflow for other people. Always. But that doesn't mean that, oh, I'm going to make sure I live in a $100,000 house in a bad spot of town my entire life just because now I can give more to the poor, right? Now, if you're called to do that, you're called to do that, okay? I'm not saying that that's not God, but I'm just saying as a vast majority, you're not more holy than the person who doesn't do that, okay? Just because you spend $20,000 on a car and someone else spent $70,000 on a car does not make the $20,000 person more holy because, oh, I was able to, well, he didn't need that much. Well, you didn't need the $20,000 car either. You could have got a bicycle, okay? So anyway, I'm digressing. So she extends a helping hand to the poor and opens her arms to the needy. She has no fear of winter for her household, for everyone has warm clothes. Why does everyone have warm clothes? Because she spent so much time working, making the clothing, right? She has no fear of the future because she spent so much time preparing for the future. She made sure that she was in alignment with where her future self needed to be. If you spend time not in alignment with where you're going, you are wasting your time, right? But if you stay in alignment with where you need to be in the future, in this instance, the future was winter, right? If you stay in alignment with where winter is, you know that in this moment, I need to be making some clothes for the winter, right? I need to be doing something that produces a profit for the future because the future calls me to need money for that instance, right? So I need to spend this moment making what I need while I can make it to prepare for the moment where I can't make it, right? She makes her own bedspreads, verse 22. She makes her own bedspreads. She dresses in fine linen and purple gowns. Again, purple gowns, that was the most expensive linen you can have back then. The color purple was super expensive to get your hands on, right? So this shows that everything that she's been doing has been profitable. right? Because now she's able to make nice clothing, not just clothing. Now she's able to make the most expensive version of the thing she's been doing. She's able to do the most expensive version of the thing that she's been doing. Crazy, crazy. Her husband is well known at the city gates, where he sits with the other civic leaders. You see here, we're talking about the aspects of the wife. But the aspects of the wife is what makes the husband able to sit with the city leaders at the gate. And the gate back then, that's just where the council of like the city, that's like where the city council was, essentially is what it is. So the aspects of the wife is what positions the husband in the place that the husband needs to be in for the city, to make sure that the city is also producing what the city needs to produce, right? So if you have a husband who's not performing the way that you need your husband to perform, you should look at yourself as well and see, am I doing the things that a good wife is supposed to be doing? And again, remember, we're talking, for those who are just coming in, we're talking about specifically the humanistic nature of the man versus wife. But as men in Christ, we are the bride of Christ. So if Christ is not at the city gate, orchestrating what the system needs, then as a man in Christ, you need to ask yourself, am I being the good wife that Christ needs so that Christ can be at the city gates? Right? If your town is not doing the things that your town needs to do, are you positioning yourself properly? Or am I spending so much time working for somebody else that I don't have time to go to the city council meetings and make sure that the laws that are being put in place glorify Christ? Right? It's a serious question. Or do I spend my 9 to 5s working for somebody else, making them richer, and us are just sustaining? Right? It's real questions. It's real questions. She makes belted linen garments and sashes to sell to the merchants. This is interesting. So she's making clothes, right, to sell to who? To the merchants. What do merchants do? Merchants sell things. So you see here, she's doing what's called a B2B, business to business sales. There's also B2C, business to consumer sales, right? But the wise woman is in the B2B market. I'm not going to dwell too deep into that because each person's in different spots. But the wise woman is in B2B. That's all I'm going to say. She is clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. Why isn't she fearful of the future? Because she's in alignment with what her future self needs. So she has no fear of the future because she's doing in her present moment the things that her future self needs her present self to be doing. So she laughs at the future because she's doing it. She's walking her path properly, successfully, prosperously, right? When she speaks, her words are wise. I'm sorry? This is 26, verse 26. Yep. When she speaks, her words are wise, and she gives instructions with kindness. Another translation says, and her teachings of kindness is on her tongue, right? Right. I'm not going to dwell too deep into that one, but she carefully watches, verse 27, she carefully watches everything in her household and suffers nothing from laziness. So she makes sure that her household has and is doing the things that they need and to be doing, right? Because remember one of the earlier verses, she sets forth the day for her female servants. So she watches over her household, making sure that what needs to happen is what's happening, okay? And she suffers nothing from laziness, remember? Because again, she's working late into the night, right? Producing the things that she needs to produce for the family. Her children stand and bless her. Her husband praises her. Again, as a man in Christ, as the bride of Christ, when does Christ praise us? Well done, my good and faithful servant. Right? Right? And also with the parable of the talents, right? The little that I've given you, you've turned and multiplied. You know, I gave you 5 and you gave me 5 more. Well done. Right? So that's where the praise is. Okay? So It says her husband praises her. So you should look for all the times when Christ praises a person in a parable and see what they're doing. And then do those things that they're doing as well as what is in chapter 31 of Proverbs, right? And that's the secret. If you just do those two things, you will have, I can't teach you anything else. You know what I mean? I can't teach myself anything else after that point. You know what I mean? Like you'll be doing it. You will be doing it. There are many virtuous and capable women in the world, but you surpass them all. Okay, so the virtuous woman, she buys and develops real estate. Verse 16. There should be a slide for this floor. Yeah, perfect. So she buys and develops real estate, right? She plants her own vineyard. She sells her garments. She trades with the merchants, right? Those are just a couple of the examples. She's also a clothes maker, right? That's what she's selling to the merchants. She is a clothes maker. But you notice that it's not one thing on the board. She's not just doing one thing. She's doing a couple things, and those couple things that she's doing very well, right? And again, this whole verse, not verse, this whole, bless you. This whole principle 7, is you need to increase your income more than just cutting your expenses. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at more than one stream of income, okay? That's the whole point of this. Yeah, let's get that mic. Thank you.
It's so interesting that you said she's not doing one thing, she's doing multiple things. And so, because I was just talking to Apostle and I was saying we got too many things going on. So, you have so many different trains of thought, you know. And of course, I'm going to go with the thought of the Bible, so to speak. So, this is actually comforting my heart because I'm like, Lord, what are we going to do? What are we going to release? What are we going to do? You know, so this is actually really, really good because I do understand the thought that focus on one thing and do it very well. However, that still works with this particular principle. It's just that whatever you're doing, do it, you know, from a place of excellence and do it wholeheartedly. But they wasn't saying do multiple things. They still saying stick to the one thing. And so sometimes you may have to do multiple things to see which one is, you know, the most beneficial. So anyway, that
Yeah.
just kind of blessed me.
Yeah, and with this one specifically, she was able to do multiple things, but it started from the one thing that she started on, right? She started with making the clothing. She started with making clothing, selling the clothing. From her earnings of that, she was able to go buy a field and plant a vineyard. So from the ability of making the money with the clothing, now she was able to branch out and do two things. And then from the two, now she's able to go back and prosper both of them more and more because now she's reinvesting into the clothes thing. Now she's making purple linen, right? Now she's making more expensive clothing from option number one because she did number one. Number one paid for number two. Number two then paid for more number one, and now number one is making more money. It doesn't say it, but she probably just kept buying real estate and then going back and making better clothes and then buying more real estate, you know. So it's never just one thing. It should start with one thing well, right? You need to be able to produce income in one thing before you start doing another thing, right? Now, the first thing needs to be able to produce its own and be able to maintain its own before you transition over to number two or another thing. But with that, yeah, if number one is not producing what it needs to produce, because that's one of the things that, what verse was that? Let me see. Verse 18, she makes sure her dealings are profitable. So if your dealings aren't profitable, change your dealings, you know? But the Bible also says that whatever you put your hands to will prosper, okay? So if her dealings are not prosperous, her hands aren't on it, is really what it's saying, you know? Because if your hands are on it, it will make money. It legally has to. By the nature of God and the universe, it legally has to make money for you. So if you're not making money on the thing, chances are, I hate to say it, you're either A, not working it out of laziness, or B, you aren't doing it properly.
So where it says her lamps burns late into the night, what do you think that means?
What that means?
Mhm.
That just means that, kind of like one of the other verses in Ecclesiastes that we looked at, or sow your seed in the morning, but then stay busy all afternoon long because you don't know from which source will produce income. Hopefully both. So here it's you want to burn your lamp into the night. Don't just say, "Oh, well the markets are closed now, so I'm done for the day." The merchants have gone home, so I'm done. Well, what else could you be doing with your time? The house is taking care of itself because that's what you set up in the morning. The house is doing what the house needs to do. My husband's doing whatever my husband needs to do for the day. So what am I going to do right now?
So
Right.
she's busy planning and maybe seeking God for wisdom and direction, which way to go late into the night. I mean, you could look at
Yeah,
it.
I mean, yeah, you could look
Yeah.
at it in many, many, many different ways. And I mean, the fact that it says my lamps burn late into the night, you think of the proverb, not proverb, you think of the, yeah, the 10 virgins, what's that called? A parable. You think of the parable of the 10 virgins where their oil never goes out, right? Which means, yeah, they're seeking God for what they need to do the next day, right? And that's what Jesus did. Jesus woke up early to seek what God's will for that day was, but you could do the same thing the night before, seek God into the night for the next morning, especially as the head of the household where you got all these servants and stuff. You might not have time to, wake up and actually seek God's face before the hustle and bustle of the day gets going. So, wow, we got 5 minutes. Time flies when you're having fun. We're gonna look at this last verse and then do a quick little recap over the 7. And then I hate to say it, I was trying to get done this week, but we're probably gonna have to come back next week to then go over the how to properly budget, how to actually set up a budget, because a lot of us need help with an actual budget, right? Now it's okay to know the principles of a budget. But if you know the principles of a budget and don't have an actual budget in place, then what good is the principle, right? So Proverbs 27, 23 through 27. I'll give Flora a second to get back to the computer. So Proverbs 27, 23 through 27. Know the state of your flocks and put your heart into caring for your herds. So here, the thing that you're over, right, where you've invested your money, where you've invested your time, your flocks, make sure you know the state of those things that you're over. Make sure you know the state of those things. And put your heart into caring for the thing that you're invested into. Make sure you know what it is, how it's performing. Is half your flock diseased? Is half your flock not producing milk? Whatever the instance is your flock suffering? Know the state of your flock. And then put your heart into making sure that your herd is healthy, right? Verse 24, for riches don't last forever, and the crown might not pass the next generation, right? Because if you don't know the state of your flock, you can't continuously make money on the state of a flock that you don't know about, right? So your riches aren't going to last forever. And the crown might not pass to the next generation. Just meaning that this wealth, this money that you've built up for yourself, if you don't actively care for where you've put the thing, it might not last for your children or your grandchildren, right? After the hay is harvested and the new crop appears and the mountain grasses are gathered in, your sheep will produce wool for clothing, and your goats will provide the price of a field, right? So here, as things are producing and growing, the things that you've produced and the things that are continuously growing will then supply what you need for the next field, right? It says, and your goats will provide the price for a field, okay? So your investments will produce the money you need for your reinvestments, okay? And you will have enough goat's milk for yourself, your family, and your servant girls. Okay? So if you do these things, if you know the state of your flock, if your heart is actively caring for your herds, right, your investments is what we're going to call them, then you're going to have enough milk for yourself and your family. You're going to have enough provision to take care of what you need to take care of. Okay? But again here, in this parable that Solomon's going over, you see that there's more than one source of income here. There's the sheep wool, there's the goat sales, which you sell a goat and it produces enough for the field. The fields themselves is a resource, right? Real estate is a resource. And then also he talked about milk, right? So it might just feel like one thing or look like one thing. It's just a field with some sheep in it, some goats in it. It might look like one thing, but what are you able to actually pull out of that one field you have, right? It's more than just one thing. It'll always be more than just the one thing. So here you want to make sure that are you fully capturing everything in your field, right? Are you fully capturing everything in your field, right? So we're going to look at this practical principles slide and then call it good for the day. So practical principles on increasing your income. You can start a side business. In fact, if you only have one stream of income, you should start a side business, right? You can do consulting. These are just examples, right? Whatever God will tell you what you need to be doing. You can consulting, freelancing, sales, online services, skilled trades, content creation, right? Those are examples. But there's, as Scripture says, whatever you put your hand to do will prosper. So really, your side business could be whatever you put your hand to do. Just make sure you're putting your hand to something, right? Plant your seed in the morning, and then stay active throughout the rest of the day. Just make sure you're doing something, and that something that you're doing will produce income for you. It has to. It legally has to, right? And if it's not, it means you're either not putting your hand to it enough, or you're not making sure that what you're doing is prosperous, right? Because there is prosperity in everything, but not everything gives the same amount of prosperity back, right? That's why the marketplace rewards those who solve expensive problems. Okay, if you're solving an expensive problem, you will make an expensive amount of money back. If you're solving a cheap problem, you will get a cheap amount back, which is fine. If you can solve 100 cheap problems in an hour, or one expensive problem a week, 100 cheap problems an hour, that's going to pay you a lot more than one expensive problem a week, right? Like the person who invented the credit cards or whatever, they get like a penny on every transaction. A penny on every transaction, billions a year on a penny per transaction. So they solved one cheap problem very efficiently, right? They created the credit card, right? So stuff like that. You want to start a side business, right? I recommend praying, seeking God, being like, God, first of all, I'm sorry for not properly using my time. I repent of that mindset. I'm going to change my mindset, and I will start actively filling my days with prosperous activity. With that, tell me what I'm supposed to do. Seek His face, and He'll tell you. He'll tell you what you are wired for, what you're tweaked for, what you need to be doing with your time. Because what you do with your time and what you do with your time are going to be two different things. They have to be two different things, right? But with that as well, you're never be fearful of, oh, well, the market's already oversaturated, or oh, well, there's already so many people doing that, right? Well, so I'm sure there was way more people selling clothing at the time that she was selling clothing. Didn't mean she wasn't prosperous in it. She was very prosperous in it, right? So don't be fearful of that, because what God has for you, God has for you. No one else legally can pick up what has your name on it. It's not even in their realm of consciousness to be able to pick up what has your name on it. Okay? So if you ask God that sincerely, wholeheartedly, and believe that an answer will come, an answer will come. And the answer that does come, don't be fearful of not pursuing it just from, oh, well, don't talk yourself out of what God has for you. That's what the children of Israel did. Like, oh, the giants, they're too big. We're too small. I can't do it. They walked around for 40 additional years for nothing but a lack of faith in what God had already told them they were able to do. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, I'm rambling. All right, so 11:33. Next week, we will actually finish the series. We'll actually finish it. We'll go over a quick recap. We will talk about why the whole purpose of money exists, Bless you. So this is what God's plan for the 90% is. And that cannot be complete without saying why money exists, for the whole purpose of why do we need to generate wealth, right? It is for us, it is for our families, it is for our households, but it's for something greater as well, right? It's more than just us. So we're going to talk about that next week. And then we're going to talk about actual actionable steps for budgeting. Are there any other actionable steps? I'll get your question or your comment or whatever you got to share. And then after that, I'll open it up for just a second. If there's any other actionable steps people want in this setting, we'll go over how to actually set up a budget. But if you have any other actionable step questions, we can cover those as well. I'm done, yeah.
So I would like the media to capture some of the previous teachings that we've done on what you've covered, because I know each time it was something different. And I really want us to invite others to come in. There are so many that are struggling in this area. First, I want to say I'm sorry that I haven't been present. I'm sorry to you, but I'm sorry to me too. Because just today, some of the things that I've learned has already put me on a whole nother mountain just in the very beginning. And so what I would like for us to do is take this very serious. There are so many that are endeavoring to start a new business. There are so many that are struggling